5 minutes.
5 minutes. It's only 15 minutes. So.
I know.
So 5 minutes.
This is fun.
Jackie will be proud.
This is the fun part.
Yeah, this is the fun part of you.
The great thing is I don't actually have to do any of the history work at all because it's philosophy topic.
That's true, yeah.
I can use this.
Believe me when I tell you.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry?
Just real quick, my name's Rob. I'll chair the session, and we could just jump right in. This is Shapel, and Ivy will follow. Shapel is from Teachers College. I'm from Teachers College as well. So it's been a pleasure learning with Shapel these past 2 years, and I'm just very excited to hear what she has to say. We'll do 15-minute sessions followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, and I'll just help facilitate time. Jump right into it.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Shapel LaBorde. I'm going to start this presentation with my grandmother's voice.
Hi, Kelly. I was just checking to see if you gotten in yet. When you get a chance, call me, let me know you're okay.
So, now let's get it started. Alright, so this is RoseBud's Morning Musings. And as you heard, this is a voicemail that my grandmother read to me. So previously I had some work about education. I had 3 points in the last conference about how education is a borderless canvas painted with experience drawn from real life, how imagination can radically transform the world in which we navigate, and then knowledge of the ever-changing self reveals that self-determination is intrinsic to life. So I'm basically working with experience and my experience as a Black woman in education and philosophy, and how that is pretty much the foundation of who I came to be and why that knowledge of self is very important to navigating this world. Now why would I do that? Yeah, so I have like a little timeline. It's gonna be quick because I can get kind of like deep into the deep end. But so my great grandmother, I was raised. She's gonna be talking behind me. I was raised by my great grandmother, who was born in Flushing, Queens on August 2nd, 1923. She transitioned my first semester of Teachers College on September 21st at the age of 98 years old. I was her caretaker. She was the youngest of her siblings, the matriarch, a working woman, a family woman, a caregiver, and she was extremely faithful. She worked in care as a nurse for over 60 years. She pushed for education. She was an activist, a quiet leader, and in basic terms, a no-nonsense kind of woman. So the questions I have for this conference is, how do our Black grandmothers' voices shape our values and foundations of people navigating the world? And what ways do our Black grandmothers' voices model self-determination? And then I will engage my experience growing up with the voice of my great-grandmother, with the voices of Toni Morrison and Angela Davis, to illustrate how Black feminist voices encourage empowered and liberated minds. So I really took apart the actual elements of my grandmother's voice, the physicality of her voice, the security and stability in her voice and message. My grandmother was not one to stutter. What she said is what she said, and you just knew to do whatever it was that she said. And the final element I would like to discuss is what I would call the affirmations spoken upon waking up every day in her house, going to school, and even exiting her house. It was always a safe message to navigate this world and come back with God's grace. So I will continue. That was my house. So morning rituals are culturally, generational, and even genetically held in high regard. Before I heard my grandmother Babe's voice, she engaged in her own usual morning ritual, leaving me little love notes throughout the day. Her voice commanded me to get up and rise. Her guidance assured I would shine for that day and days beyond her physical presence. School was a thing for me and her, so sites of learning was very, very important. Church was very important, school was very important, because it was an opportunity to better myself and better the family and therefore better the community. So this morning ritual set the foundation for the value of learning for me and improving the self and being responsible for my community. I called this a kind of call and response with body. As soon as I heard my grandma's voice, I kind of just woke up, got together, and just knew what I had to do. So I put in the yellow notes, I don't know if you guys can see it, it was her voice that molded, guided, and taught me my first lessons on being a Black woman, a person, and a responsible member of my community. Whether she was in the basement ironing my uniform or in the kitchen frying me an egg or making pancakes, my grandmother's voice cut through the subconscious noise of any possible self-esteem issues or feelings of inferiority. I'm a very confident person, but I'm also very humble, y'all. So it's not like unbearable. This attention to detail of both mind and body is Somaesthetics in nature, because I could never really separate the mind and body moving when I heard my grandmother's voice. So channeling greatness. How do our grandmother's voices travel through our bodies and environments, help cultivate a sense of responsibility and self-regard? So in 2021, I buried my great-grandmother, RoseBud. However, her voice still is in my consciousness daily. The way she trained me up as a faithful woman, that's a Proverbs, fostered a thirst for educative, liberating, and self-defining praxis, manifesting both belief and action that I am extremely important and connected to a larger purpose and a trajectory of healing and growth. These are a few Black feminists who I also admire and I'm using in my work. But for the purposes of this presentation, I pulled out Toni Morrison and Angela Davis. The Black female body has been a historical site for objectification, and it is through our utilization of our modal voice, the first level of our vibratory forms as human beings, that we, Black girls and women, come to resist such objectification. Every day was a day with an immediate purpose and a call to perform to the best of my ability for that particular day. She set the tone of importance by getting up before me and curating an environment that would ensure a confident transition from my door, her door, to my seat in K-12 public schools in Queens, New York. I'm from Queens, New York, and I was raised in the public school system until I went to college. So I pulled out some quotes by June Jordan and Audre Lorde, which you can see. And in philosophy and education, oftentimes feelings are not honored, but I pulled out Audre Lorde's quote of "Our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge." In my work in education and philosophy, I always come from a personal standpoint, and I always solidify why my experience as a Black woman is important, and I always build on that. So, why Angela Davis? I took the book They Come in the Morning, which is a collection of essays. In that book, there's an opportunity to examine and analysis the effect of the carceral system. So more specifically, how it affects the mind, the voice, and body of Black people, especially Black women. If you know Angela Davis, you know she was incarcerated. You also know she's a trained academic. She has a PhD in philosophy under a German philosopher, Marcus H. I forgot how to say his last name. But this was extremely important to me to include this voice from this angle, as it related directly to my existence as a Black feminist thinker and academic, and my personal family experience as a descendant of a late Black Panther Party member. So it was edited by Angela Davis with Bettina Epteker. And then I used another book called Toni Morrison's A Source of Self-Regard. It's over there. It's okay. But it's a great book. That's how it looks, the cover. This is a collection of essays serving as a guiding text about the power of language, Black women, empowerment, critical race theory, and spiritual faith. Through these essays, I extract Toni Morrison's voice from text to highlight a model of self-determination and self-regard, two seminal, affirming, and grounding concept beliefs in Black feminist epistemology. Here, Toni Morrison highlights the importance of dreaming. So that connects to my work from last conference, where I talked about how the imagination can radically transform the world in which we navigate, dreaming new things. Dreaming is a pragmatic action and is sourced in the strengthening of the radical imagination. It is a muscle that has to be built. When you have a grandmother like RoseBud's LaBorde, nothing is impossible. So I am an only child. I was raised by my great-grandmother, who, unbeknownst to me, turned down her admissions to NYU College of Arts and Music at 16 to work and support her family after being one of the 2 people who graduated from Flushing High School in the 1940s. Education is imperative for both survival and, I made this word up, thrival. No one pushed harder for me to go to Spelman College and supported me mentally, physically, spiritually, financially and psychological than my great-grandmother, Grandma Bay. It was here where the idea and living philosophy of faith, intelligence, and service to the world was amplified. The merging of the experience of being raised by my great-grandmother Rosebud and being at Spelman College is the impetus of my pedagogical practice and life's purpose. I am always my sister's keepers first. So Spelman College is a historically black college and university with, everyone's black and everyone's a woman. So having that experience and being raised by my grandmother as a black woman, I understand and experience why this is the key to the liberation of not just myself and my community, but to the eradication of oppressive systems all across the globe. I took Toni Morrison and Angela Davis also because of their unique sisterhood. They had a 40-plus year history of sisterhood and friendship and activism, and I felt and thought it was extremely important to highlight and uplift this for these two thinkers in regard to this work I'm doing. I hope y'all having a good time.
Seriously.
The why and how. So these are some pictures of my great-grandmother. This is her when she was a teenager. This is her with my grandfather, and this is her with my looking at a picture in the Queens Museum of my late great uncle, who was a Black Panther Party member. Okay, so in my experience of watching, listening, and feeling my great-grandmother's voice, I learned a great deal about myself and my ancestors at an early age. Dreaming is not an activity for deception and impossibility, but inception to a life well lived for all in the highest self-regard. So the 68-year age gap and the domestic harmonizing of our lives created an intergenerational salve and healing and generational traumas as Black women. So Toni Morrison and my Grandma Bay positioned me to conjure the highest self I could imagine despite whatever condition I was in and show up as her. And by education, I do not mean hobbling the mind, but liberating it. And by education, I do not mean passing on monologues, but engaging in dialogues. That was a quote from the source of self-regard. So I'm still perfect. I'm doing a great job. So I was like trying to get done because I was like, oh no, we can't cut this off. I gotta finish this. All right. So that was pretty much it. I'm still working on it. I would love to share the final product with you all, which should be done around May. But I want to give some special thank yous because this is important to me. So first and foremost, I'm very faithful, and I would like to thank God. I would like to thank my family, my great uncle Abdul, my great grandmother Rosebud, my grandmothers Ramona and Rosalind, the spirits of my ancestors, my mother and daughter Ramona. That's my daughter Sage Ali, and my supportive friends, professors, mentors, and colleagues. Y'all are a blessing to me, and much gratitude for getting me to this point and helping me along my journey. These are some of the resources I use for this work. I use Toni Morrison's The Source of Self-Regard, Angela Davis, If They Come in the Morning, Voices Are Resistant, and I'm also using Bell Hooks, Rock My Soul, Black People and Self-Esteem. I have some more, but for the purposes of this presentation, I just mentioned these. And then I also have my grandmother's Letters of Resistance. My grandmother would write you a letter and demand change. She would write a letter to her boss. She would write a letter to the school. If something needs to change, she would write a letter to whoever she had to write a letter to. And if the letter didn't work, she would go up to somebody's office, talk her talk. She would always take it higher because she just did not settle for things being a way if it was not right. So I also use that as a source of inspiration and information for my work. And the last thing I want to end with is love is never any better than a lover. And I really truly want to thank my Grandma Bay for always loving me, and I love her more and more every day. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 13 minutes for Q&A. So I think, Shapel, you could probably field the questions and call on people as you raise your hand. And I'll just let you know when it's the last question.
Okay. Yes, Kyle?
Yes, I should.
Okay. Hi.
Well, I have 2 quick points for reflection and a question for you. So first off, that was like a phenomenal presentation in terms of like graphics. And I've never seen it like, I don't know what system you use. That was like truly phenomenal.
Thank you.
That was point number 1. Point number 2, I really liked not only you sharing your grandmother's stories. I think so many people have a really great connection. I think grandparents are often underrated in society. But also how you physically mentioned just like the sound of her voice. And I think oftentimes when people pass, we do physically lose the sound of her voice. And how you were able to share that with us, I think was very special. So thank you. My question for you, I'm very interested in human rights. That's where my scholarship I hope to be, but also in anti-racism. And it seems like your grandmother really embodied civil rights, human rights, and just the overall achievement of her. How do you think we can incorporate more anti-racist work in human rights and civil rights education? Or what are your general thoughts?
Yes, that's a good point. I think so that's what my work talks about, this knowledge of self, and being accountable and being real with yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people of color are not granted that opportunity because they're not reflections of themselves and the education that they're receiving in schools. So I was privileged. I am grateful to have been disposed to a family where that was the number one priority. My family is a very Black, proud, and radical family. So although something could have been being taught in my school, my first site of learning was always in my home, and in my community, and in the church. And so despite whatever political red tape was over the schools that I went to, I still had that grounding. And I think it's important for students to have that, but we live in a world where all students do not have that access. So I think as educators and people who really want to see change, I think we should encourage people to explore their self. I think we should encourage feelings. I think we should encourage that self-discovery, to dismiss it and to just say that everyone's the same, or to say certain things are political, and it's not personal. That is a robbery of an anti-racist education system, and it's a robbery for liberation for all of us. So that's my opinions on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hi, my name's Lynn. This was really wonderful to listen to. I really appreciated your discussion on these non-formal experiences and how important non-formal educational experiences and how important they are. I think the way that you placed it within education gave it and within these other scholars really gave it legs, because I think so many times we have these experiences that people don't take seriously. And I think about classmates quoting Beyonce's song lyrics, and teachers are or whatever, but she has these profound statements, and it's I wish people would take those informal experiences more seriously. So I love the way that you rooted it, because it was I believed you as soon as you said your great-grandmother was important and educational, but then it was everybody's gonna have to believe you because you really put all the work in to lift that up. And I thought that was really wonderful. And I wanted to ask you kind of your experience. You said it was in Angela Davis's work, you pulled her voice out of the text, and I was kind of curious what that meant and what that process was for you.
Thank you. So one of the essays, thank you so much for your words, thank you all. One of the things that I really focused on in my paper was particularly a correspondence between Angela Davis and Erica Huggins, who were two big figures, women figures in the movement. First of all, let me just tell y'all, for the Black Panther Party, women ran the movement, from the breakfast programs to housing to the printing, the secretarial work. They were literally the organs of the organization. Yes, we see a lot of pictures of the men with the guns, the breasts, the aesthetic, but women ran it. So these two women had a correspondence because Erica's husband was murdered, and Angela was incarcerated at one point. When she got out, she wrote a letter to Erica, and in that letter, she's giving her, through her voice in the letter, because they couldn't talk on the phone, they're America's Most Wanted and things like that, everything's underground, but through the letter she just encouraged her. She told her to keep going and things like that. And that is a big sentiment in Black feminist epistemology. She honored the fact that she was going through a lot of grief and trauma with her husband being killed, and her daughter at the time was 3 years old. And still, with all that trauma, she told her that, we as a community are still here backing you up. We're going to support you. Keep your head straight, keep your heart strong, and things like that. So it's a very fine dance of encouragement and not dehumanization, because sometimes we can dismiss feelings of trauma and grief when things like that happen. So I focused on that because I think that's something phenomenal that Angela Davis, previously being incarcerated, having her sanity, you know, having her life still, was able to still provide this vehicle of encouragement to another Black woman, and that's kind of how the Black sisterhood works. So I just wanted to highlight that, and that's something that is very important in community. But Black women we could be the model for that, but I don't think that that is isolated in our community. I think that we all can display this kind of humanizing factor of, like, you know, providing encouragement and, you know, support to other people, but not dismissing that they're real human beings and they do go through things. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes,
Because that was like
yeah.
one of the papers that I really thought was striking to me. Because how many of you can say you have your sanity, being in prison and beaten and things taken away from you and not being able to raise your children, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Hi, Ivy.
Hi. First off, this was a delight, which is not something I say in academic conferences very often.
Oh, thank you.
I love this. But I was just thinking about, like, coming from this particular movement of thinkers and these voices that have informed your life. You're presenting your work and really deeply informed by work where people's real life and their personal experiences are right up against their philosophy, and they're the same thing. And I was thinking about how often in, like, educational philosophy we talk about, like, the risks of putting your own life into your work, right? Because then it gets critiqued along with your work. And you're really strongly saying, like, no, look, this is all the same thing.
Yes.
So just personally, like, how do you experience that? And do you feel a risk in sharing the people you love and your life as you share your, like, philosophical work? Just, like, what's that like for you, doing both of these at the same time?
It is interesting because it's very interesting because I am always doing that. My classmates can tell you I'm always talking about Black people, I'm always talking about women, and I'm always bringing up my family because that experience has literally, like, if somebody can mold me, that has molded me into the thinker I am. So to not give credit and to not speak on those things would be so inauthentic, and I wouldn't be able to produce real work that I would feel applies to what I want to do in education and philosophy. I do the work of elevating the voices of Black thinkers because we talk so much about other thinkers, but I do the work of doing that because that's my experience, and they do have things that are valid to say. It's hard because, you know, there are not a lot of people that look at me in this space, whether it be education or philosophy, but to combine it, and that's why it is important, and I believe, you know, not to get all spiritual on you all, but I think that's why my ancestors chose me to elevate this work because it's there. I didn't make it up. You know, like, maybe people didn't think to look at Angela Davis, look at Toni Morrison, because the avenues in which these people think are not the traditional formal academic training, you know, but they have things that are important to say, and because of the oppression, these people couldn't get access to say it in the ways of other thinkers. So it's my job to, like, really elevate that and to talk about my experience and not separate, you know, my work from what I want to, you know, what if my experience and my work are one and the same. I don't know how, I can't even conceive because of the way I was raised in separating it. I can't separate it.
Love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. This conversation that has kind of evolved through the questions has brought me to consider kind of exactly what you were just mentioning. So many scholars and voices have been left in the margins as, just thinking of philosophy, since we're at a philosophy conference, as these narratives that run through philosophy have been built. And a lot of voices have been left completely outside of that. And something I've grappled with as someone doing philosophy is how to identify and wrap those voices into a scaffolding of arguments or into the development of concepts when the academy is kind of just always driving you back to, like, dead white people. I'm wondering if you could, through your work, maybe have some advice for some of us in the room about the process of identifying scholarship that has been traditionally left outside of philosophical conversations, and any considerations you might have for us as we try to expand the voices that are present in work today.
Thank you. What's your name again?
I'm Tom.
Tom, nice to meet you, Tom. Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and that's something that I am working hard at, like always, deconstructing. This is not the academia of the world, but it is because certain people said so. I think if we're gonna really make real change, I think we need to question and unlearn some things and incorporate other ways of thinking and logic and order. So I feel like if those are not our goals, we need to all get clear about our goals. If those are not our goals, then this conversation is just for vain. But if those are our goals, then there are certain things, certain structures, certain systems have to be taken apart and looked at in a different light. Other voices, other ways of thinking are out there, and what we would have to do is just really get clear on our goals. And that's why knowledge of self is so important, because you have to know yourself and what you want and what are you doing for it. If you're doing this work to just get accolades, to just get titles and material things, you can get that easily and just keep the same system. But if you're doing this work to enact real change, then we have to incorporate other voices, and we have to do away with certain systems. So that's my thing, is like the unlearning process and unpacking certain things. And Patricia Hill Collins in Black Feminist Epistemology chapter, she talks about how even for me, as a Black woman, to come up here, I still have to do these mental gymnastics within this discipline and do a lot of work. I have to do a lot of work to prove that this is a valuable and viable option of knowledge in academia. But I'm willing to do it because I have to make the space.
Yeah, and presumably, I'm also hearing you say that if people who are not Black women want to help with that labor, it is time for people to maybe set that intention and start elevating that alongside.
Yeah, I think we all just need to get clear on our goals. I think it's hard sometimes because we just get in the motion of doing things. Like, you gotta do this paper, you gotta do that, I think we need to question more. I think we need to have real conversation, dialogues. That was one of the points Toni Morrison brought up, but not just monologues. You know, even the lecture style, certain lecture styles may just be one person talking at you. Why do you have to take that? Why is it not more communal? Why is it not more of a circle? Why is it not more of a dialogue and things like that? And I think once we all get clear on our goals, and I say all as in, you know, different cultures and backgrounds, that is a more of a powerful force to question structures. Black women can't do all the work. Women of color can't do all the work, like you said. So once everybody gets clear on their goals, I think we can have some real progress. And that's something that white supremacy really robs us all of, like everyone, because I was just telling my friend, white people have culture. Like, culture is not like inherent to just Black people or Latino people or Asian people. White people have culture too, but it is like really sad that white supremacy is just like kind of like, I have met so many white people who said they don't know what culture they have, you know. And there are places, I've been to European places where like there's real culture there, and I think that once we really do away completely with white supremacy, not saying anyone's racist or not, but I think we all work under a white supremacist model. Once we do away with that and we get back to this knowledge of self and get clear on our goals, I think real change could happen, but it has to be a community effort.
We're out of time. Let's give it up.
Oh, thank you.